There's only one day left to get your humble Creative Freedom Bundle. Get Sony Vegas Pro 15 edit for as low as $25 via my affiliate link in the description below or the card on screen right now. And don't forget that you can choose where your money goes, so consider chipping in on the charity effort. It seems like there's a new captain taking control of our ship. If you thought that 2018 was a bad year for Overwatch and Blizzard in general, then you're not gonna like the prospect for 2019. Wherever you look, you can find news reports everywhere talking about the shady business practices that Activision has introduced. Where previously, Blizzard had the freedom of being, for all intents and purposes, an independent entity that could work on their projects however they like, Activision is now taking a more prominent role in the day-to-day operation of Blizzard Entertainment. Staff being laid off, corners being cut, projects being cancelled, all these things and more make us worried about the future of one of our favorite developers. And don't be mistaken, I am very well aware that my last video was a very emotional take on how I feel about Blizzard in general and Overwatch in particular. The point of the video was very strictly to convey the feelings of a desperate community that does not want to believe that there's no way for Blizzard to get back to their older ways. But today's video is not about that. Today we have genuine reason to be worried and new information that proves my wishful thinking wrong in a big way. I did not want to believe that Activision was as actively involved in Blizzard's operations as they are. Finance departments don't care about whether or not we can reset our mythic keystones in World of Warcraft as much as they don't care about whether or not Doomfist deserve to be nerfed in Overwatch. It is obvious, and it always has been obvious, that Blizzard is well capable of making mistakes entirely on their own. And I think most people were very aware of that. While pointed out and complained about, fans often overlooked hiccups like that because, in large, Blizzard was one of the few outliers in our industry that decided to truck at their own pace, disregarding what everyone else is doing. Rather than chasing annual releases, their promise to support their games for a long time created a lot of trust in their communities. Discussions surrounding whether or not taking a step back from Heroes of the Storm was a necessity are easily debunked thanks to an article from Kotaku presenting a lot of information regarding Activision's approach for Blizzard Entertainment in 2019. You'd be right in your assumption that supporting a service that is not profitable does not make a heck of a lot of sense, but that is only assuming that Heroes of the Storm actually wasn't profitable. The article suggests that Heroes of the Storm always has been struggling to find as much financial success as Blizzard's other big hits, with reference to Overwatch and World of Warcraft earlier in this read. But considering Activision Blizzard's position as one of the biggest, most successful game developers of 2018, even their weakest link is likely to be profitable, just with margins that are lower than their big hits. But even if, for the sake of argument, we suggested that Heroes of the Storm was not profitable, there is still a lot of incentive for Blizzard to keep supporting their IP, and the reason comes down to PR. Over the years, Blizzard has gained a lot of trust from their communities through their promise of ongoing support, and it's a business model that works. Blizzard fans often find themselves spending the vast majority of their free time playing Blizzard titles, because they know there won't be a new entry in the series next year that renders all their progress futile. The live service model for Blizzard has been more than a short-term plan, with World of Warcraft celebrating 17 years of ongoing support. Companies of any kind spend a lot of money on that kind of PR move that does not necessarily see an instantaneous return. It is much easier to quantify how much money you spend on creating microtransactions and then gathering data from their APIs to find out how much money these products have made in any given time span. But when it comes to promises like the one of ongoing support, it creates loyal communities and willingness to engage with microtransactions more frequently. Players are showing more goodwill towards things like that when they genuinely enjoy a game. That means that even if Heroes of the Storm was not profitable, it will be easy for Blizzard to subsidize it through the money they make with their big hit titles. And all of that in an effort to uphold their promise of ongoing support, reinforcing the trust of their fans in Blizzard as a company. And again, companies are spending money on PR all the time. Whether they donate to charity, hold events that cost them a lot of money with really no product to sell at the venue, or by supporting third parties who may turn into open supporters of your company. But it is obvious that Activision does not share that kind of a mindset. Finance in general in Blizzard has been one of these invisible functions that's there but doesn't have a say, said one veteran employee who left recently. Now they're suddenly in meetings. That further suggests that Blizzard never had a financial problem in regards to supporting even their weaker IPs. Not only that, but none non-development departments have been told to cut costs on a monthly basis. That includes customer support and IT, yet they claim that customers can expect the same level of support even though their staff is actively being pushed towards leaving the company as part of their cost-saving measures. And if you thought that this year's BlizzCon goodie bag was an obvious downgrade from the last one, then you'd be absolutely right. Because even here, Activision has been cutting corners according to this article. And while you might think that the prospect of them hiring more game devs is a silver lining in this whole story, think again. With Activision's approach of minimal investment for maximum profit, as well as their history for annual game releases, it should be clear that ongoing support is not necessarily what they are striving to do. Instead, the idea of us seeing more projects along the lines of Diablo, Do You Not Have Phones, Immortals becomes increasingly likely for even their other IPs. Where previously I was speculating that part of the development resources that were taken away from Heroes of the Storm would go towards Overwatch, I am now convinced that they will be approaching different avenues. At best, we might be seeing some spin-off titles of Overwatch for other platforms, and at worst, Activision might force Blizzard to break their promise that all new content added to the game would be free of charge. It also becomes increasingly likely that they are banking on the Overwatch League to maintain interest in the game over spending more money on developing content, especially considering that you can put the names of your sponsors on a TV screen, but not on a new game mode. As it turns out, I may have very likely been wrong in attributing as much fault to Blizzard as I have in the past. Yes, they are very well capable of messing up all on their own, but Activision's influence is growing ever stronger. But the reality of this situation is that if 2019 turns out to be as bad of a year for Overwatch and Blizzard as these articles have been suggesting, then the idea of Blizzard going the way of EA becomes less of a nightmare and more of a painful truth. I'm going to be linking the article I referenced in today's video down in the description below. I highly recommend that if you care about Blizzard or any of their IPs, you should look up more information regarding this topic. I've made this video on very short notice just to get the word out to my community, so I apologize for not going more in depth. At any rate, thank you everybody so much for watching today's video on Blizzard in 2019. Don't forget to subscribe for more and hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any of my uploads. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.